Chapter 8. People were raptured before. The millions of people who disappeared in the rapture aren't the only people who've disappeared throughout time. The Bible tells us of a couple men who had the pleasure of being raptured, per se. Let's take a look at their stories and learn why God took them, so that we can further understand the rapture. The first person God removed from the earth was Enoch. You were introduced to Enoch in the prior chapter. Remember that he was the great-grandfather of Noah, who preached righteousness and reprimanded the angels who left heaven to sleep with women, thus creating the giants and evil spirits. Enoch lived during a time that's very similar to today. He lived right before the flood. We know this was a time of unprecedented wickedness on the earth. Every thought of man was continually only evil. Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of man's heart was continually only evil. Yahweh was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. Yahweh said, "I will destroy man whom I have created from the surface of the ground, man along with animals, creeping things, and birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them." But Noah found favor in Yahweh's eyes. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. God saw the earth, and saw that it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. God said to Noah, "I will bring an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them and the earth." Genesis 6, 5-8, 11-13. Enoch was different than almost everyone else who lived during this time. He walked with God. Walk in this instance reflects how Enoch behaved. He pursued God. He had a close relationship with God. Because of his special relationship with God, the scriptures tell us God took him. After Methuselah's birth, Enoch walked with God for 300 years and became the father of more sons and daughters. All the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and he was not found, for God took him. Genesis 5:22-24. He was caught up into heaven or raptured. That's right, Enoch didn't die. No one could find him because God took him. Just like the millions of people who vanished didn't die. The second person God removed from the earth was Elijah. Like Enoch, Elijah was also very special to God. He was a man of God. To be a man of something means you reflect or represent that something. Elijah reflected and represented God. He had such a close relationship with God that he was even able to pray for fire from heaven, and God answered and did it. The woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that Yahweh's word in your mouth is truth." 1 Kings 17:24. Elijah answered to the captain of 50, "If I am a man of God, then let fire come down from the sky and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from the sky and consumed him and his 50. 2 Kings 1:10. He was one of God's prophets and lived during a time of terrible persecution against God's people. In fact, Elijah was the only prophet of God left alive at the time because Jezebel, an evil ruler, had killed all the others. He came to a cave there and camped there, and behold, Yahweh's word came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I have been very jealous for Yahweh, the God of armies, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." 1 Kings 19:9-10. Once Elijah completed the work God set out for him, God took him up to heaven in quite a spectacular fashion. When Yahweh was about to take Elijah up by a whirlwind into heaven, Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. As they continued on and talked, behold, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. 2 Kings 2:1-11. Can you imagine how cool it was to see that carriage with the magnificently powerful horses and all that fire coming just for you? So there you have it. God has done this before. He raptured a couple people in the past. You're probably wondering why God took Enoch and Elijah up to heaven before their earthly bodies died. Well, the Bible tells us that Elijah will return before the terrible day of God. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. Malachi 4:5-6. That terrible day is also called the day of the Lord in the Bible. It's the time of God's wrath that happens after the rapture, and more specifically, the time of God's wrath that starts after the Antichrist declares himself God in God's temple. So Elijah will return after the rapture. The Bible doesn't make that same statement for Enoch, but I'm willing to make an educated guess that he's returning as well, based on some events that happen in the future and who's in attendance. During the tribulation period, the Bible tells us that God sends 2 witnesses to preach the gospel day and night. They do this for 3.5 years. I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. If anyone desires to harm them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and devours their enemies. If anyone desires to harm them, he must be killed in this way. These have the power to shut up the sky, that it may not rain during the days of their prophecy. They have power over the waters, to turn them into blood, and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. Revelation 11:3-5-6. So who are these 2 witnesses? They have some incredible power. They're able to stop the rain, shoot fire from their mouths, and, like Moses, they're able to turn water into blood and inflict plagues. The Bible doesn't say, but I think it's pretty clear that they are Enoch and Elijah. Let's look at some more clues. Another clue we're given about these 2 witnesses is that they die and get resurrected. In these verses, the beast is the Antichrist. When they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up out of the abyss will make war with them and overcome them and kill them. Their dead bodies will be in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. From among the peoples, tribes, languages, and nations, people will look at their dead bodies for 3.5 days and will not allow their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. Those who dwell on the earth rejoice over them, and they will be glad. They will give gifts to one another because these 2 prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. After the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered into them, and they stood on their feet. Great fear fell on those who saw them. I heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." They went up into heaven in the cloud, and their enemies saw them. Revelation 11:7-12. The Bible tells us we're all appointed to die just once. So, this must mean these 2 people hadn't died before. Since Enoch and Elijah were both raptured, they haven't died before. It is appointed for men to die once, and after this, judgment. Hebrews 9:27. Because neither of them died, they very well could be the 2 witnesses that are coming. But there's more we should consider. Elijah, the special prophet that God took to heaven, was known for his ability to stop the rain. His fervent prayer to God made the rain stop for 3 years. It didn't rain again until he asked God to make it rain. Elijah also had the incredible power to summon fire from heaven when he prayed to God. Since the witnesses have rain-stopping and fire-shooting abilities, it certainly seems like he'd be a good fit, doesn't it? Elijah the Tishbite, who was one of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, "As Yahweh, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word." 1 Kings 17:1. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain. And it didn't rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. He prayed again, and the sky gave rain, and the earth produced its fruit. James 5:17-18. Elijah answered them, If I am a man of God, then let fire come down from the sky and consume you and your 50. Then God's fire came down from the sky and consumed him and his 50. 2 Kings 1:12. So what's unique about Enoch that could make him the other witness? Since he lived right before the flood, he's familiar with living in a very wicked time. Enoch knows those fallen angels and knows their demonic offspring, the evil spirits from the Nephilim and giants. When men began to multiply on the surface of the ground, and daughters were born to them, God's Son saw that men's daughters were beautiful, and they took any that they wanted for themselves as wives. The Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that. When God's sons came into men's daughters and had children with them, those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of man's heart was continually only evil. Yahweh was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him in his heart. Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the surface of the ground, man, along with animals, creeping things, and birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. Genesis 6:1-2, 4-7. We learned from the book of Enoch that he reprimanded those evil angels. As he has created and given to man the power of understanding the word of wisdom, so hath he created me also, and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. The book of Enoch 14:3. The time after the rapture, called the tribulation, will be very close to Enoch's time in terms of darkness. As it was in the days of Noah, even so it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married, and they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ship, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, even as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But in the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and sulfur from the sky and destroyed them all. Luke 17:26-29. We know Enoch walked with God during that terrible time, and he warned the people of God's coming judgment. He would have been a bright light in such darkness. About these also Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord came with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all, and to convict all the ungodly of all their works of ungodliness, which they have done in an ungodly way, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Jude 1:14-15. You may remember from the prior chapter that God took those fallen angels who slept with women and bound them in darkness. Angels who didn't keep their first domain but deserted their own dwelling place, he has kept in everlasting bonds under the darkness for the judgment of the great day. Jude 1:6. Well, during the tribulation period, Satan is officially kicked out of heaven and given the keys to the abyss. Satan is the star which had fallen. Even though he fell from heaven, he still had access to God. We see him lose that access here. Now, he's confined to earth and releases his buddies that got locked up by God thousands of years ago. The fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from the sky which had fallen to the earth. The key to the pit of the abyss was given to him. He opened the pit of the abyss, and smoke went up out of the pit, like the smoke from a burning furnace. The sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke from the pit. Then out of the smoke came locusts on the earth, and power was given to them, as the scorpions of the earth have power. The shapes of the locusts were like horses prepared for war. On their heads were something like golden crowns, and their faces were like people's faces. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like those of lions. They had breastplates, like breastplates of iron. The sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots, or of many horses rushing to war. They have tails like those of scorpions and stings. In their tails they have power to harm men for 5 months. They have over them as king the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon. Revelation 9, 1-3, 7-11. In addition to that, during the tribulation, God releases 4 angels who have been bound at the Euphrates River. The Bible doesn't say why they were bound there. It could be they were among the fallen angels who slept with women. It could also be they rebelled against God in a different manner. In either case, Satan is the king of all the fallen angels and will be using his whole army to afflict mankind. The 6th angel sounded. I heard a voice from the horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, "Free the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." The 4 angels were freed who had been prepared for that hour, and day, and month, and year, so that they might kill 1/3 of mankind. The number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. Thus I saw the horses in the vision, and those who sat on them, having breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, and sulfur yellow, and the horses' heads resembled lions' heads. Out of their mouths proceed fire, smoke, and sulfur. Revelation 9, 13-17. Since Enoch lived on the earth when evil angels were wreaking havoc, he has a special knowledge of them and experience with them that no one else on the planet will have when they are loosed again. He preached about God's judgment before the flood. If he's one of the witnesses that comes back during the tribulation, I imagine he'll warn people of the wickedness of these angels, help people identify them, help people not be deceived by them, and help people overcome them. Enoch was able to walk with God during that time of terrible wickedness. He's a great contender to preach the gospel during the tribulation. Let's see what Matthew Henry had to say about these scriptures in a commentary he wrote in the 18th century A.D. Note that his reference to Elias is in fact reference to Elijah. Elias is the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew name Elijah. Some think these 2 witnesses are Enoch and Elias, who are to return to the earth for a time. As for the fire breathing, some think this alludes to Elias calling for the fire from heaven to consume the captains and their companies that came to seize him. They shall have that free access to God, and that interest in him that, at their prayers, God will inflict plagues and judgments upon their enemies as he did on Pharaoh, turning their rivers into blood and restraining the dews of heaven, shutting heaven up that no rain shall fall for many days, as he did at the prayers of Elias. Chuck Smith, in his C2000 series commentary, thinks these 2 witnesses could be Enoch and Elijah as well. We know for certain the identity of one of the witnesses to be Elijah. The identity of the other witness is not so certain. Others believe it will be Enoch, who did not die but was translated directly into heaven. For it is appointed unto man once to die, and in the Old Testament 2 men missed their appointments, Enoch and Elijah. And so they come in order that they might make their appointment with death, because we are told here that after they have prophesied for 3.5 years, then the beast, the Antichrist, has power to put them to death. In this chapter, we learned that God raptured people before when he took 2 men who walked with God during dark times, Enoch and Elijah. As preachers of righteousness during those evil times, they would be well suited to preach God's word during the tribulation period. While God can certainly bring back Enoch and Elijah as the 2 witnesses during the tribulation period, he might not. God might raise up 2 completely different people to preach his great news. If you are left behind after the rapture, heed the warning of these 2 witnesses and turn to God before it's too late.